Trigger, the studio that keeps giving. Studio Trigger is a renowned animation studio that has animated genre-defining anime. So whenever an anime is released that's made by Trigger, you know it's a safe bet. You watch Trigger anime because you know you're going to watch something that'll probably be more memorable than any of the other miscellaneous anime that have plagued the bulk of average. We can look at some of the greatest hits. Consider Kill la Kill. I'm sure that there's many new gen anime fans who are watching their manga panel compilations on TikTok about Jujutsu Kaisen or Chainsaw Man. Some of you may be hearing about Kill la Kill for the first time in this video. A moving and influential story of a sister's feud that uses clothing as a metaphor for being open about your feelings and showing your genuine self. But if Kill la Kill is too old for you, imagine saying that unironically, consider one of Trigger's newer pieces of fiction, Cyberpunk Edgerunners, a standalone anime that takes place in a dystopian corporatocracy about a young man trying to find his way in a city of chaos. Edgerunners was the perfect soup of a great animation with its own distinct personality, great character designs, a romance with a beautiful wifey, and an ending that brought many to tears. It's honestly incredible how Trigger played a role in one of the most impactful and memorable anime. By its own presence, you'll see cosplayers, fan art, and a devoted fan base to this series. Now, there are even more good anime that Trigger has been animating, but this video isn't specifically about glazing Trigger. While Trigger makes good content, they're not infallible. Consider one of the more blue-balling anime that have released and jumped the ship to God knows where, Darling in the Franxx. I remember when the anime community was enamored with 02, and still to this day you'll see appreciation posts and cosplayers represent her offline. But by every means this anime jumped the ship so hard that the anime quickly lost its interest for its compelling story, but was only remembered for its pink-haired waifu. While this next take may be more controversial, I consider Promare to be one of the more worse animated movies by Trigger. It was an absolute bore to watch, with a ton of similar assets and references to other Trigger works. I feel like Space Luluco does it right. Promare, simply put for me, was unimpressive and forgettable. I even had the joy of watching it on a massive panel room at a convention, and I was still unimpressed. In summary, when Trigger animates a truly amazing anime, it's enshrined in the annals of anime history. But if the anime isn't really that spectacular or even turns bad, it's forgotten or it's ignored. The point being that Trigger rarely falters, but when they do, it's a bit surprising. So now we find ourselves at the crossroads. Is it better for an anime to be remembered as a bad product, or rather just never spoken about again? Kiznaiver was released in 2016. 8 years ago, I remember watching this in real time as the anime dropped. The only reason I watched this anime was for two reasons mainly. Because Trigger had animated Kill la Kill, and I expected an amazing product. And secondly, because one of the characters looked like a mini Esdeath. 8 years ago, from what I could recall, I had no major issues with the anime. The anime, like the blooming of flowers, came and went. The unfortunate part is that 8 years later, I still could not give you a sufficient explanation of what the plot was. So now, 8 years later, we're back. Now, I have to be perfectly blunt with you. I may be cruel, because the whole purpose of rewatching this anime was solely to remember why it was forgettable. I learned a new hatred for this poor excuse of an anime. After watching the 12 episodes, I felt cheated, I felt wronged. It took me hours to organize my thoughts on why I felt this way, and why I felt like the Trigger formula had completely failed and resulted in this stalled climax. Comparing it to Darling in the Franxx is a compliment, because at least every year I see at least one person in public wearing a 02 shirt. I would love to be proven wrong when I say that I don't think anyone in the history of anything has ever worn Kiznaiver merchandise. Let me give you a slight introduction to the world of Kiznaiver. Our main character, Katsuhira, I'll just be calling him Katsu from here on out, is recruited for a special Kizna project. Essentially, 7 children are bonded together, all operated by a secret society in order to achieve world peace. One begs the question, how will they find peace by kidnapping these underage children? Well, they do it by bonding their pain receptors and to distribute pain amongst the 7. Therefore, the shared pain becomes a manner in which the children will empathize with each other's physical pain. Conceptually, one can fall off a roof and survive. That actually kind of happened in the first few episodes. So it's almost like this secret organization has found a form of pseudo-immortality, but that's not the point of the anime. They don't really want to talk about that. However, residual pain is the exception, and that's not typically shared, and the pain is being only shared to a physical level. The Kizna project was created so that people could feel how others felt to create understanding. Almost like the concept of empathy doesn't exist in Kiznaiver. The Kizna project had an original run in the past, but it ended in failure, with one child suffering from receiving everyone's pain and being amplified instead of shared. So in the current day, our main character, Katsu, is an empty canvas who is incapable of showing emotion. His ability to feel pain is non-existent and allows himself to be beaten up by bullies like some wuss. Our main character is kidnapped, and 6 other students are bonded, and the anime officially begins. A great way to make you understand how the Kizna project works, if you still don't get it, is to imagine the Pokemon Experience Share tool. One of the best ways to explain the story is through the 7 characters who are in the Kizna project, and how they really interact with each other, because this anime is heavily reliant on its characters. For this section, I'll go through the least problematic characters, all the way to those who truly shine in this cesspool. In the first episode, Noriko, Mini Death, the character who looks constantly constipated, explains to Katsu that because of our contemporary and ever-changing modern world in Japan, the 7 deadly sins have transformed, and they make a big deal of this at the beginning of the story, and they assign these labels to the 7 characters. Well, 6 in the beginning, because there's a 7th member who they haven't found yet. First, we'll start with the Cunning Normal, a character who's basically an Inumuta reskin. The assets were still lying around in Trigger's main animating studio, and they just decided to breathe life into him again, without the Goku uniform and without the glasses. Yuta, this blue-haired NTR victim-looking ass protagonist, is one of the characters who received little development and couldn't carry much to the finish line. Yuta, in a sense, is supposed to be the attractive one of the class. I don't see it. But we're always told, this by the show spoon-feeding us scenes where he's with these 2 chatterboxes that are always trying to get his attention. He's the proverbial cool kid who doesn't stand out much because of his sheer character design, and because he's compared with other more eccentric characters and even tries to stay away from those eccentrics. Yuta's big secret is that he was fat. He was a fat child who was embarrassed that he was a fat model for advertisements. If you drench this piece of ham in white, you might as well get a new mascot for the Pillsbury Doughboy. Now, in the modern day, he's skinny, on maybe some diet pills, and eats a strict diet of grounded meat and eggs. If he doesn't eat those, he literally just resorts to popping pills like a box of Tic Tacs. Honestly, considering that Yuta has issues with body image, it would have been an absolutely stellar move for the anime to go in depth and allow other characters to feel this large insecurity. But we never get there. Yuta's peak character development comes from Maki, and that's it. See, it starts with Yuta acting like a straight Neanderthal and pointing out that Maki has massive chicken breasts. Now, Yuta, as a human being, why would you think this was ever a good idea in the world? In the US, that would be sexual harassment. This comes back to bite him in the ass when he refuses to eat any cooking made by the Kizna friends, and Maki, out of the goodness of her heart, cooks Yuta some classic, delicious omuraisu. Maki then basically asks Yuta, "You want to touch my chest, boy?" To which Yuta says, No, I believe in love is pure." To which Maki pins down Yuta, forcing him, to touch her. It's like, do it, coward. What's even more concerning in this comment section for this clip is, I guess the same audience of pedo Peters from Hero Academia flocked to this anime because this scene is by no measure supposed to be funny. Where it's, the teacher walks in on him to stop it. How do people find this funny? That's just really odd. It's a guy who was sexually harassing a girl and now she's kind of just pissed off about it. As Maki knows that he only cares about looks, or at least that's how he's known as. He's a superficial guy. But as the series progresses, Yuta tries to show Maki that he's a decent guy and cares more about personality than looks. The next major event is when Maki is exposed for being an author, which connects her to her best friend who died, but we'll talk about that later. That's a big kahuna. Because realistically, Yuta never did actually have a connection with the main character, Katsu. And after these 2 main events, his only role was to put in a quick remark in any scenes. I feel like if this story was truly 24 episodes, then we would have had a lot of time to really explore his character. I feel like his entire body image insecurity was this massive red herring to talk about. So this all leads me to the whole point of what does it really mean to represent the seventh deadly modern sin of the cunning normal? What is cunning? Cunning, Google, is to be clever to get what you want. But when we consider the character himself, it falls flat. Yuta isn't really cunning when it comes to the girls who follow him like groupies. He has good looks, but Yuta doesn't really use them in a cunning manner, because cunning is usually used in the sense of a manipulator. A cunning character, a great cunning character, would be like Peter Baelish from the TV show Game of Thrones. An individual who uses his place in society to scheme and plan to get what he wants. From betraying friends to murdering psychotic girlfriends and manipulating your crush's daughter, he is cunning. So what exactly did Yuta do that was cunning? His looks did most of the heavy work, but even then, there are scenes where Yuta actively spends time with the two girls who talk to him in class. I would believe a cunning individual would just try to use these women as a one-and-done situation, but he doesn't. Why? Because these two women are his friends. So what cunningness is he using to get what perceived benefits? Is blatantly saying a girl's chicken breasts are huge a cunning ploy to get her to sleep with him? No, we call that stupidity. What does it mean to be normal? Is Denji now guilty of being a 7 deadly sin of Japan by wanting a normal life of eating, fucking, and shitting? By what measure is it normal? Well, Yuta, certainly by looks, is the most normal. Dare I say, the most unoriginal looking of the bunch. So how is this exactly a 7 deadly sin? How is a state of nature, being normal, a 7 deadly sin? He's a creep who learns to respect women by not saying their breasts are huge. He's not clever enough to get himself out of the Kizna system. These titles are utterly useless, that were just put in to sound deeper and more thought-provoking. The Immoral was the last character to be introduced. 6 of the Kiznaivers all woke up with the scar on their arms, but Hisomu was introduced after the initial icebreaker challenge of telling each other secrets. The manner of introduction was quite clever. The Kiznaivers begin to ask each other if they feel hurt because throughout the day they've been receiving little short flashes of pain. After they realize that none of them are being hurt, they turn to hunt down their last remaining member. The final member is the immoral one, Hisomu, a masochist. Name me a better combination than a masochist and pain. For him, it's like a wet dream. He's a crazed psychopath who stays inside of his apartment inflicting pain on himself, while also enjoying the fact that he can receive pain from the outside at unexpected moments. He's in the same class with the other Kiznaivers, meaning he's probably like 16 or 17. So he's kind of like a minor. The episode he's introduced in, he's essentially climaxing. And the audience is supposed to find this funny. This character's ecstasy bursts are almost to the same degenerate level as that one anime with the dragon and the maids and the little girl who's doing some weird stuff. Yeah, that's another topic for another time, but from what I've mentioned earlier, that's it. The character in this anime is the comedic relief. Whenever the characters are in a sticky situation, he is happy to be receiving pain. The most in-depth we ever get is how he explains that he doesn't like emotional pain. Wow. How inventive. The masochist doesn't like their emotions being hurt. Yeah, no shit. I don't know if the director thought he was breaking barriers with this sudden realization, but it's just elementary. I find myself drawing blanks when talking about this character because he literally does not have any depth to him. Hisomu is incredibly useless. He plays no greater role in the story, and he's only there to bark like a degenerate and lie on the floor to show how badly the emotional pain is affecting him. Hisomu has no redeeming qualities. He's forgettable. Similar to this anime, how is immoral a 7 deadly sin? I'm not too sure because it lies within the original 7 deadly sins of lust. Hisomu wants more pain inflicted on him, but he's never proactive in the story to begin with. Immoral in what sense? Is it only limited to the masochistic pain, self-inflicting sense? Is he immoral because he just likes pain? When it comes to this character, we're dealing with really surface level content. It's essentially pain bad, bad immoral. It's the fact that we spend no time trying to even remedy this. Like we did with other Kiznaivers, that's a metaphorical middle finger. Like, he's just there because it's funny. You know, why is this kid even a masochist? Did he suffer some sort of trauma in the past? I wouldn't be surprised. You know, he offers the most basic ass sage advice. You know, when he was telling, you know, emotional pain hurts. But Lanza, you may ask. The person who makes others laugh is actually the most depressed one. Yeah, no, Hisomu isn't some sanctified class clown. The goody two-shoes is Chidori, the red-haired girl who we originally think is going to be the main character's love interest. Chidori is a fine character, but also lacking in a more extensive field, as she's fully reliant on Katsu's character. She's basically your average Joe. Honestly, she should get the normie title. You know, when they see something, they say something. But after that, her personality just hinges on the fact that she wants Katsu to appreciate the different things she does, like making food for him. Throughout the story, she's pretty basic and not utilized as much until the main climax, which is its own like mini plot within this story. There's a side plot within Kiznaiver where Katsu is trying to get closer to Nori because he keeps seeing this blue-haired girl in his memories and he's like, she must be the key to my memories. And Chidori's jealousy as Katsu continues to talk to Nori bleeds into the Kizna system, and that's how emotional pain starts to be created. So one of the better scenes of this anime is when Chidori's emotional states is when she's going, you know, just in full chaos mode, and she saw Katsu hugging Nori. And Chidori is basically saying, I want to be held just like she is by Katsu. And when Katsu wants to, Chidori's emotional state then says, how cruel. I really liked this. You know, emotions are ever changing. You know, they're like chemical compounds. It's at this specific point that not just Chidori, also Tenga and Nico were all beginning to get stuck in a ridiculous love square, pentagram, I don't know, but I'll just say square. Eventually, Chidori has to come to terms with the fact that she lost the romance battle. And the last episode is forced to move on, possibly hinting at a relationship with Tenga, maybe, but maybe they'll just be friends. It really does suck when you consider the fact that her character, her entire character's purpose was just to fit into the love square. She has no individual agency outside of the love conflict and gets a pass as compared to Hisomu because at least she was able to bring in some good drama into the mix. I have no idea how the goody two-shoes is a sin in the modern world. I'm extremely confused about this and believe the writers have no idea what they're talking about. Calling someone a goody two-shoes is a character trait. It is not necessarily a negative. Even then, Chidori's goody two-shoes nature does not rise to the level of Hermione. At least to the extent to label Chidori as one seems really uncalled for and just ridiculous. They just wanted to brand her by mere association of the title. In a certain way, the show wants to cheat character development by changing an individual and branding them with these titles. The eccentric headcase is Nico, but I'm going to call her Nui because she just looks like a used asset for Nui Harime. Nui's character introduction is by showing her in front of a shrine praying for fairies. The reason she makes people think she believes in fairies is because she wants to be different and weird. Her family is pretty well off, and in order to not be classified as some plastic, she develops this persona that believes in the supernatural. She is a fraud. Nui, pretty similar to Chidori, is only used to exhaust the love square where she is targeting Tenga instead. Now, the show doesn't throw a complete curveball at us with this relationship. Throughout the story, Nui would stare at Tenga whenever Tenga's trying to help Chidori. So, you know, the only other time that Nui gets any major personality is when she's at Maki's friend's parents' house and looking at the shrine for Ruru. So basically, one of the Kiznaivers, Maki, and her friend Ruru wrote a manga together using a pen name. As the manga comes to an end, Ruru's condition of kidney disease worsens, and I think towards the end of their friendship they were developing this almost romantical interest in each other. Definitely Ruru was, but Maki pushed her away and then shortly just cut off contact with her. If you fall in love with someone who's about to die, you're probably gonna get fucked up emotionally. Ruru's eccentricness is similar to Nui's eccentricness, those little short bursts of energy. Ruru's mother blames Maki for Ruru's death, or at least worsening it, because Ruru was Maki's only friend. So what ends up happening is Nui says to this grieving mother who lost her child to kidney disease, "I'm sad. Maki pushed me away too, but I need to be considerate of Maki." Look, before I get into analyzing, why are you so stupid enough to go instigate a grieving mother? A woman who lost her child to this disease, and you're telling her, no, you're wrong. Can you imagine how insensitive that is? I guess as the audience we're supposed to feel sorry for this moron, but I clearly couldn't. There's a time and a place. And I'm glad the cast did call her out on it, because that was just... like, look around you. Clearly this family loves their daughter, and you're agreeing that she was too obsessive. So after this insane outburst, Nui basically isn't relevant until the Love Square arc, where we find out she's been pining for Tenga, and I'm like, okay. And I'll just loop back to this. It really sucks that at least Chidori and Nori had some sort of relationship to Katsu, meaning the triangle is fine, but Tenga added is just more exhausting, and with Nui just trailing, feels like this story just wanted to add more love relationships in for the lulz. You know, Nui's relevance just fails completely after the failed romance. That's it. It's just so laughably bad that a majority of the relevance for these female characters was solely based on their love interests. Like, come on, you can do something better. You can do something more interesting, at least. The eccentric headcase sin is a description. It's not a sin. You can be an eccentric headcase and not be, you know, do you know what the meaning of sin is? You know, sin is a bad thing. Like, I don't know if the people who made this, like, know that. So, you know, we know that Nui's a fraud, so her headcaseness of seeing fairies isn't even real. So she's a liar. Why isn't her seventh deadly sin just being a fraud? Aside from that, she has some minor ADHD for being hyperactive, but that's about it. The imbecile is our main character. And if it wasn't for one specific moment in this entire anime, I would have ranked him as one of the worst main characters of this story. Katsu can't feel pain. He never really understood why, but he was basically, as a toddler, unable to receive pain. In a twist, we learned that Katsu was one of the original members of the first Kizna project, where his pain receptors were stolen and given to Nori. But after that, Katsu is the most boring main character in this entire story. Even after he gets his pain receptors back, imbecile means a stupid person. Katsu isn't a stupid person. The boy is literally just adapting to the ever-changing world around him. Do you want to call him stupid for not reciprocating Chidori's love? Are you going to call someone stupid for not reciprocating love when they clearly don't? How is being an imbecile a deadly sin? How is being stupid a deadly sin? And what is the measure to this? I can be stupid and forget to set my alarm off. I can be stupid and run into someone's car because I was going 80 miles per hour. I can be stupid and not know what 2 + 2 equals. So what is it? Katsu has not shown any way to show that he's stupid, aside from maybe not realizing certain clues to Nori. That's not stupid because he had his memory, like, it's been impaired. So is being forgetful stupid? It's so frustrating, and the anime wants us to house our character as stupidity because he doesn't reciprocate feelings, he doesn't remember. It's utterly absurd. The best scene Katsu is in is when he ends up traveling to the secret laboratory where the original children from the first Kizna project are, and they've essentially turned into vegetables as they cannot feel or even have a sense of sentience. Seeing them basically breaks him down and yells out this blood-curdling scream. I love it. I think it was probably one of the best scenes in this entire anime. After that, Katsu's only relevance is to tell Nori to not do her apocalyptic plan. The musclehead thug is Tenga, one of the cooler characters of the story. It really sucks when the side characters are just infinitely more compelling than the main character. Tenga has the spirit of Sanagayama in him, this bare-knuckle boxer who always overexpresses 100% of the time. Tenga originally befriends Katsu after he defends him from bullies, and just acts as a guard throughout. Tenga doesn't really get over any real trauma. He's actually pretty normal because he's a delinquent who has some love issues. Fortunately, Tenga and Chidori end up getting closer as just friends after the Love Square arc. Tenga literally receives no major development aside from stating he's afraid from dogs. After that, his role is to help Chidori try to hook up with Katsu, and fails tremendously because he falls in love with the person he's trying to help. In a sense, I can understand what it means to be a musclehead thug, which is just a watered down version of pride or wrath. And if they're so similar, then why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? Clearly the original 7 deadly sins apply to these characters, but no. You wanted to put your own little spin on it with a shade of irrelevancy. There is no purpose for changing these titles of the 7 deadly sins. What does thug mean? Because I know what thug means, and clearly I don't think you do. Tenga is no thug. The man is going to school. The man is trying to get an education, and is trying to rizz up the red-haired girl. But just because someone is physically stronger than another doesn't mean they're being a thug. You know, when you think of thug, it's more negative. If anything, the only reason why I tend to like Tenga more than the rest is because he does want to help someone in their pursuit of a relationship. You know, I don't think he really held a malicious bone in his body for wanting to date Chidori by any measure. So if anything, the Kizna project just tried to make him look worse when it exposed his feelings. And finally, the best character from the entire anime, because she was basically given a majority of the story, Maki, as I was previously explaining in Nui's section, feels guilty of murdering her friend because she cut her off before she died of kidney disease. Maki feels extremely guilty because she wasn't there to support her friend, yet she could feel like they were beginning to fall in love. Maki, like literally any other person in the world, could not handle growing close to someone when their life was about to be snuffed out. Maki doesn't come off as high and mighty. Rather, from the start, she just seems sheltered and introverted. So when we label someone as high and mighty, we will expect some sort of cockiness and better than you mentality, but we don't. It's rather that Maki is dealing with all sorts of pressures from her life, and she shuts herself away from the world, being reclusive, not high and mighty. The quiet kid in the back is not high and mighty if you want to call him a Sigma male. The title does a major disservice to her character from the perspective of the audience because we're basically branding her as a high and mighty character. But if anything, Maki's character does come full circle. Her trauma over her friend Ruru is absolved, kind of, in a sense, because Ruru is dead, and the only way to cover a scar is by making new relationships to cover it. Thus, the Kiznaivers all come in to help. I mean, we can't forget the fact that Ruru's parents probably hate her fucking guts, especially after Tenga said that Maki could feel responsible and Nui had her little mini outburst. So that's never really going to change, and hopefully she never runs into them again. I mean, towards the end of the series itself, Maki basically exposes herself as being a feeder. That's right, she's just like Hal. She wants to make Yuta fat again. In the end, Yuta objectified her breasts, but now Maki gets to objectify Yuta for his fat. Overall, I really do believe like these titles were a disservice to the story. By preemptively branding a character at the first episode, the anime instinctively telegraphs to the audience that these characters are these personalities. The problem is that they do a massive disservice when the descriptions aren't even fully cognizable. Even if you're gonna brand them, okay, here's an example. If you would brand them as one of these 7 deadly sins and the whole purpose was to show that they aren't those 7 deadly sins, why don't you tell us? Or at least why don't you invest in doing it more and showing, oh, you're not really this type of sin? Because remember, we're not dealing with the original 7 deadly sins, which would have made this a bit more easier to understand. We're dealing with the 7 deadly modern sins of Japan. The problem is that, you know, the mentality of this Japan sins is that Japan's system of working together is more important in this country. So it's changed the 7 deadly sins? I mean, okay. The rest of the world works pretty similarly. Like, look at the US. When there's a profit to be made, we'll be dancing and singing and kumbayaing together to achieve our goal. So the fact that this Japanese-only 7 deadly sins just feels really inauthentic. Additionally, this branding is just fake character development, and I called this out earlier. The anime wants you to hear these titles and assume the characters are just only these personalities. The goody two-shoes is applied to Chidori. Are we to assume she's a strict by the rules character? Well, clearly she isn't. And if your argument is, well, the 7 deadly sins for this anime were supposed to be deconstructed, you know, could have done a hell of a better job doing it. You're coming into this story, episode 1, with these titles, these 7 deadly sins, and the characters don't even fit the mold. Katsu isn't an imbecile because he's learning. High and mighty Maki never even began to look down on other people. If you want to say she didn't like Nui, it's because she reminded her of her friend. I do truly believe the only reason this anime created these 7 modern deadly sins is because they thought it sounded cool and it did all the heavy lifting of character development. Like, that's it. If you can name these characters something, the audience can come into the anime saying, oh, so they're this personality. Tenga's always getting into fights. He's a rabble rouser. We don't know that. You've just labeled a character. We're to assume their personalities. It's fake character development. It doesn't work. I bet this show thought that they were the cream of the crop when they were like, oh boy, my anime is dropping references to the Bible. Kino alert. I'm just glad this anime never popped off. I would never want to see these stupid ass new deadly sins being some sort of trendy topic. The next section is the three major themes throughout the story, because everyone else is a one and done gag. The first theme would be to show yourself. In Kill la Kill, clothing, in a sense, was just a metaphor for opening your heart. It's like, take off your clothing and show who you really are. So really for Kiznaiver, you're showing yourself to an extent of showing your pain. The Kizna's project's purpose was, at least the secret society, to achieve world peace by connecting everyone to each other. How in the world are you going to connect people who hate each other to feel each other's pain? Unless you're literally an overseeing world government who can do anything everywhere, you don't have the power to do that. The Kizna limitation is through its physical limitation. This is an oldie alert. In Naruto, one of the major issues of the past was that Madara and Hashirama had come together for the good of the world. These warring clans who would never form an alliance only achieved this peace by being open and showing each other's clans their own hearts. It helps that Madara and Hashirama were friends, but by being totally open and genuine, one can achieve peace and understanding. It makes one of the last few episodes more aggravating to hear, because Nori's supervisor says that the Kizna's project's goal was for others to feel not just physical pain, but emotional pain. To therefore feel emotional pain without being connected. What the fuck? Really? You don't understand how empathy works? You don't need the Kiznaiver project to teach you this. Rather, a better argument is to say that the new Kizna project is just to help Nori become a normal girl again. But of course, with everything going on about the secret society wanting a certain thing, it's just ridiculous. You can feel other people's pain. You don't need to feel fully their pain. Empathy, put yourself in the place of me. Because that's the whole point of empathy. Another theme for this is the one for all for one. It's said in the beginning of the anime, Nori says it, and the more I, go through this video, the more I realize it was just a buzzword. It's just a buzzword to sort of entrance, anime watchers. The whole point of this phrase is that, we're all coming together to help out one person. And the final theme was, the cicada coming out of the ground, and truly, I'm still trying to analyze it because they started it in the first episode. There's this cicada that comes out, and Katsu's like, oh, that's cool. The cicada in the world of Kiznaiver, comes out of the ground, mates, and then dies, only for its offspring to continue the cycle. So I guess the main question is, who is the cicada? I'm assuming Katsu said it, so it'll probably relate to him. Katsu, to a degree, was alive as a child, burrowed his way underground when he lost his pain, and became emotionless when the Kizna project messed up Nori. So now Katsu came back out of the ground to reconnect with Nori as cicadas do, and his mating, in a sense, was connecting with Nori again emotionally. And the old Katsu dying and the new Katsu lives on. The Japanese see cicadas as symbolism for nature, like actual green nature of the story, and the story takes place over the summer. This last section is just devoted to the main criticisms I have outside of the characters, and that's that we only go surface level with everyone except for Maki and Nori. I haven't talked much about Nori, but I feel like you can gather a good amount of clues from what I've been talking about. So Nori was one of the first original children in the Kiznaiver project with Katsu, and unfortunately she was a victim because all the students' pains and their sensations were instead rooted into Nori. So she took on 20 people, and the rest of the students would start to lose their ability to feel pain. So the secret objective of the Kiznaiver project was to find a way to cure this and to give back the pain, which is why Katsu really wants his pain back, and Nori is always having to be injected with some sort of medicine that will dilute her pain. And really, aside from that, Nori does develop a bit of a romance towards Katsu. She really likes him because of how friendly he was when they were children, and that's basically it. She basically becomes the main villain towards the end. The Kiznaiver group doesn't feel like a group. Most of the development is implied, and we see the greatest hits. I feel like if this anime was 24 episodes, we would see proper interactions during the summer. Maybe Got in a Beach episode, or anything really. It's the summer. Go out and have fun. For after that point, the story just kind of falls apart because the height of this anime was in the middle of the story. The love arc, the love square arc, is where everyone starts to get exposed for their relationships, except Hisomu, who's kind of just doing his own thing and being a creep. Because the final part of this anime is Nori trying to connect everyone in the town together through the Kizna project. But the anime really doesn't explain this. Like, I think Nori was trying to go for this doomsday scenario towards the end by connecting everyone's pain together. So, like, let's look at it. Like, Nori wants to connect everyone in the town. So she needs an effective way to do it. The secret organization wants to shut the Kizna project down because of the funding, lack of funding. So basically Nori becomes the insurgency within the organization with her new corrupted dogs. But by then, the way she's connecting everyone isn't even being shown. Like, the dogs are fighting the corrupted dogs, but there's no sense of panic within the populace. Like, how is she just like going up to someone and just like placing like the scar on them? Like, what are you doing? That's why I felt like the love square arc just felt more impressive, because the stakes were actually there with individuals that we actually care about and who we've been going over. This anime is functionally Trigger. You have these mascots, you have these characters who resemble the same style and personality of previous Trigger characters, but it feels so hollow. It doesn't feel original, and most importantly, it feels trendy. This anime feels like it was created for the sole purpose of getting clicks and attention. Like, look at the bright colors, look at these funny looking character models. Studio Trigger? We love it. It must be good. It's just one big disappointment. I didn't really find myself that entertained with Kiznaiver. It felt more of a slog towards the end. It feels like a half-finished product that lacks any substance. What really would have helped it was to be a 24 episode series. You would be able to get better moments where the characters are interacting more. It could have been before the final climax with the love square arc. Shown more scenes where the characters are interacting with each other. You have great models. Sure, they might not be original, but you have great models. I feel like Kiznaiver wanted to be this mega important anime about connections, but the problem was that other animes have done it much better. I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. Is this anime mid? It is the most mid-looking thing I've ever seen. I'm not gonna say it's bad, because the designs are good. You can't deny that. But the fact that this just goes nowhere, and as a really small side note, I might do a video on this later, but you know, I watched Castle in the Sky a few days ago. After like eating this like mud pie. This Ghibli film, Castle in the Sky, it tasted like mint chocolate ice cream. Fellas, oh god, it was so good. It was so good. Good soundtrack, good. Like, I know it's a bit unfair comparing like literally gold to shit. My god, it felt really good to see an anime that's actually good, unlike this. So I'll leave the video there. You know, do not watch this. Do not watch this. Save your time. Watch something else. This is slop at its peak.